Stephen Waguespack is the president, CEO of the Louisiana Association of Business and Industry. Hey, Mr. Steve, how have you been? Thanks for taking time for us.
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me on.
So let's start with the impending fiscal cliff, what Governor John Bel Edwards says is a fiscal cliff, and the sort of line in the sand that he has drawn with the state legislature. As with most impending fiscal cliffs, Lord knows this is not our first, a variety of opinions as to what's the real situation, who's to blame, etc. What do you think about all this? Where do you stand? What do you see?
I think the way I stand is the fiscal cliff. I think the first question you have to ask ourselves is it still a fiscal cliff or is it more like a fiscal speed bump? Because let me explain why. The fiscal cliff was defined several months ago as $1.5 billion. Well, since that time, there's about $400 million of that, which we call continuation, which is inflationary stuff. And both the governor and the legislature and everyone has said, you know what, that shouldn't count. We're not going to ask for that this year. So that drops the number to 1.1. And then Revenue Estimating Conference came out a couple weeks ago and said, you know what, collections are up about $240 million. And so you piece that on top of the relief we get, or at least government gets here in Louisiana because of the federal tax bill that passed. Those two alone added almost another $500 million on there. So pretty soon you're talking $500 to $600 million is the real number. So the fiscal cliff, with nothing happening at all, with the session not happening, with the governor and legislature not even talking, has gone from 1.5 to roughly 500 to 600. So maybe if we just look the other way and let nature take its course, this thing might keep dropping into fiscal nothing if we look at it that way. Let's assume that doesn't happen. Okay. And all of a sudden you got $500 million. That is a much different discussion than 1.5. That absolutely demands that legislature and administration start talking about ways to make government more efficient and modernize and all that good stuff, and not just look to a tax-only solution.
Wags, let me ask you, when you say tax-only solution, the governor has talked about streamlining our tax code. Robert Adley was on the other day. Let's get rid of all these exemptions. You have to be concerned about that. You represent business. Worried about it?
Well, yeah, I'm worried because what they call tax reform is nothing even close to tax reform. Because when they say get rid of exemptions, they mean take that money and throw it towards a government program that hasn't been reformed in years. It's going to keep growing and we can't afford. When I say tax reform, I say, look, if you want to get rid of exemptions and credits, let's have that conversation. But anything you save, use to lower tax rates for everybody. That's what Congress did last month. They took exemptions and credits, eliminated them, and used it to lower the tax rate. And what you see across the country is bonuses being given, wages being inflated, investments in new equipment, dollars coming back from overseas. If you want to talk about tax reform, let's do that. Let's get rid of exemptions and credits and lower the tax rates for working people, not get rid of exemptions and credits and then dump it into some government program that 3 years from now is going to be out of money again.
An interesting point you just made. We had John Kay on yesterday from Louisiana chapter of Americans for Prosperity, and he said the biggest problem, the biggest economic problem facing Louisiana is the instability of the current tax code, and that the biggest thing that Louisiana legislators could do is to stabilize the economy by changing the tax code. I think that's basically what you're saying, right?
Absolutely. Look, every year the exemptions and credits, they make it hard for government to predict what's coming in. It makes it hard for average small businesses and families to figure out how to use them all. You need like an army of CPAs and accountants. Businesses and taxpayers don't want that world. That's the world that government here in Louisiana has given them over the last 50 years. There's this false impression that business loves the exemptions and credits. No, we have a horrible tax code. And over the years, instead of having the guts to fix it, we have put one little exemption and credit over the other over the years to try to mitigate its harm. Let's get rid of that world and let's get back to a low, flat, fair world. That's what we're looking for. In Texas, you don't have an income tax. You don't have a very high business tax or corporate tax. They depend on more taxation that's closest to the people. You pay more of your taxes to the county there through sales and property. Here in Louisiana, you flood it all up to the capital, and you hope it comes back down in the form of good roads and schools. And history has shown that model is bankrupt.
Stephen Waguespack, Louisiana Association of Business and Industry. Got to ask, your name's thrown out there as a possible candidate for governor. Could we be talking about Governor Wags?
Well, that sounds weird, doesn't it? I would tell you that there's always a time for politics, and I definitely don't think it's now. I mean, I think right now we're going into a rough fiscal situation. We need everyone to put their own political ambitions aside and just get to the table and try to hammer this out. This constant grinding over not fixing tax policy or economic policy or government policy has got to stop. And so I would ask everyone, put the politics aside. Let's get to the Capitol. Let's all work together and figure this out, because it's time for a sensible solution that puts taxpayers first, that has some stability to it. And injecting politics is the last thing that's going to make that happen.
Get rid of that temporary 1 penny?
It depends. My sense is it depends on what the governor wants to do as far as reforming government. If a part of that is used to bridge towards something big, some big reform, we know we've got big challenges with our pension system and our Medicaid program. We know that we need more transparency in all of our spending. We know that we need to put a hard spending cap on there to control inflationary growth over the years. If he wants to really bear hug some of those concepts and put a big, bold reform in place and work with the legislature to do it, I'm open to a bridge to get there.
Are you confident?
Depends on what.
Are you the least bit confident that John Bel's going to do that?
Man, I'm always confident. I mean, if you're not confident, then what's the point of getting up in the morning? So, I mean, look, all you can do is get there, roll up your sleeves, get to work, and that's what we do every day, and that's what I hope every other, political figure is doing every day. I mean, let's just go grind it out. And am I concerned? Absolutely. But we're going to keep working at it.